Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I've got Professor Bill in the house from Comic Book University. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm okay. I'm shy. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
What's up?
not at all. Just another loudmouth Jersey boy
Yep,
that now lives to the north.
I
So,
do. Dude, whoa, 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 whoa. May the fourth be with you, sir.
and with you as well. That's the proper response, right?
Yes, yeah, especially if you're a Catholic.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, it is. It is May the 4th, which means it's Nerdarchy's birthday, our company's birthday anyway. He's 6 years old.
Try to do it quietly, but congratulations, sir.
Thank
Oh
you.
man, back in the day, everybody who was just like, "What's? They've got another version of freaking D&D out? You're kidding me, right?
Yeah.
Let's go and check out what's this Nerdarchy site? They're the only guys talking about it." And then today, you guys aren't doing it in libraries anymore. You're not doing it on your patio anymore. Dave, what do you call it? Ted's basement looks so much better.
Yeah, yeah. We carved out a little corner of Ted's basement. That's the quote unquote set,
Uh,
which I imported to my home here while we're
yep, yep,
apart.
yep.
So, yeah, I mean, come a little way. We've had we also seen like a lot of other YouTubers come up and like, oh, that's how you're supposed to do stuff, and they kind of like taught us. so, so we learned as we went. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
Mm. Well,
But
I have also followed your pattern of just shut up and just shoot straight from the hip. Be honest. Don't try and be a character. Just be yourself and just talk about what you know and what you love. So that's always been my model because I learned it from you guys.
well, that's awesome. We like to give back wherever we can. But speaking about giving, like your channel has got over 5,000 videos about comic books on there, superheroes, movies, TV shows, and you've even done some RPG videos.
Yes, I have. I actually have a whole bunch in my pocket that I haven't put out yet. I'm going to put up one today. I feel uh, a lot of pressure on me to put up what do you call it? An RPG video because of this today.
Nice. That's like we were talking before we went live here, and I still to this day have people asking about those Marvel games, if we're going to do more, and I'm just like, hey, go over to Comic Book University. They're still happening. You can go check
They
them out.
they technically are. We've got a whole bunch going on right now. We did season one and season two on your channel, and I did season three on mine. And it's just like 10 episodes, saying I actually have some old faces show up. One in particular, Ty Johnson.
I
Uh,
know. I think that was
yeah,
one of the reasons I had stopped in to check it out. I was like, ah, Ty.
yeah. He came back, but it's a different character. He did. So, yeah, he's playing, and he had a very eventful end in the campaign. You and I have played with him before, so you know how he likes to play his characters, and like he really got his game on that one. A
Yeah,
couple other guys in there, a couple guys who are actually in the chat right now, Underwood Sketches and Derek Pierce, Comic Book University alumni.
yeah.
But we got a good game going together, and it finished in season three. So now I'm actually doing season four, but I'm not doing these live. So I'm putting these up afterwards, and I've actually got three campaigns running simultaneously, and I've got two more that I want to do also for season four. And I'm just now today going to put up the first episode because this.
So that leads me to my next question, which you've already answered because you're recording them and then putting them up.
Yes.
Yeah. So like in season one and season two, they were live and you actually incorporated the chat. Like you would allow them to actually kind of take part in the game, and they become like they all like jumped in the game as animals at some point.
Some of them are actually in the chat right now.
Yeah, yeah. Which is and the things that they would try and do, from the chat.
Oh, oh yeah.
I actually,
Well,
at some point, we were the sidekicks, and it was just us helping the chat out.
it really was. Once they got especially once they decided they're going to get the Roombas together and form like a Voltron Megazord thing, that
Yeah,
was pretty much it. Like we were done.
it was all over.
But that was actually really easy because Brandon was running season two, so
Uh,
he made it really easy for us to do it from I'm trying to remember. War Eagle
Keep War
Keep.
Eagle
War
keep.
Eagle Keep. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got the first two words. There's the assist. That's what I'm
Yes.
talking about. Oh, hey, from those days, how's the microphone sound from those days?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of, hey, what's going on, Dave?
Yeah, yeah. The upgrade. Hey, it happens. We grow. So
Had to.
yeah. So it's funny though. Like that game always made me laugh just because it's like 30 years dead. dead. But who knows? Maybe the phase rip system will come back. You. I mean, technically, you can't copyright game mechanics. So if someone wanted to bring it back, they could totally use that rule set. It was a good rule
Um,
set too.
yeah. What's funny is that I am technically Mr. Face Rip. My introduction, I've got like 50 videos teaching you how to play Face Rip and going into the mechanics, going into how to actually, build things, which has always been the hardest thing. Going into like how the magic system works, depending on the previous system and the advanced system. So with all those videos, I'm actually number one on YouTube or on Google for, well, not on Google because then you're talking about the classic Marvel
Yeah.
that website, which is just like that's the hands down best. You can't argue with that one. But on YouTube, I've got like the number one videos showing. Or actually, or yours with me, my face on it. But anyway, um, what do you call it? Today, yeah, it's a little bit different. There's a lot of people bringing back the face rip game. In fact, a couple of celebrities started playing the face rip game, doing the social distancing thing. So they're doing it online now.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Like, was it celebrities or were they like comic book people?
See, in my world,
The
they're
celebrities.
celebrities. I'm the guy who goes up and interviews Jim Shooter, and the whole time I'm doing my nervous laugh and
Yeah.
and like like a little girl. It's just like these are my heroes, man. These are people I look up to.
Nah, I totally get that. Well, I guess they're not like movie stars, or I guess actors is where we kind of look a lot of times. But no, I thought that was a really cool idea that they're doing it, and they're doing it as a fundraiser for comic book stores because, well,
Yes.
when there's no comic books coming out, it makes it really hard to have a comic book store.
In the States, yes, it is really hard. I am a Jersey boy, but I am living up in Canada now, in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. They've done a lot of good things for our small businesses. Like, oh yeah, 75% of your rent gone, and that was a conservative governor who said, or technically a governor who said that. We
Yeah.
call them premiers here. So yeah, we're taking care of each other up here really well. But yeah, in the States, it is really hard. So there's a lot of people just trying to help out the best they can.
So, what were you reading before the comic books started coming out? What was your go to?
Everything,
Well,
everything new.
that's true. You have to have something that's a favorite, right? Maybe. No.
Uh, yeah, I had some things that were my favorite. Immortal Hulk was my favorite comic book that I was reading. That was by Al Ewing, who I got to interview by phone. So that was fun. And then Donny Cates has two books out. He just started doing Thor comic book after a 7-year run from Jason Aaron. And then Donny Cates is also doing Venom, and yeah, that's a really fun book.
I guess a lot of these movies are going to get delayed too now.
Oh yeah, they are. Actually, yesterday was the day that was it yesterday? I think yesterday. No, 2 days ago was the day that the Black Widow movie was supposed to come out.
Yeah, this it's gonna be brutal. I'm hoping for some more straight to streaming.
Yeah, we're not going to get a whole lot of those. We're going to get The Mandalorian. That's not being delayed. That's still going to come out
Yeah,
in the fall.
yeah, it'll be the following season it gets delayed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, probably.
what are you gonna do? Now's a good time to dig into the oldies but goodies. Speaking of which, what would you recommend? Like people that want to jump in the comics now, why they got a breather, and then have to work. They have some time to catch up. Where would you
Yeah.
send them?
Well, for one, now's a great time to actually start writing for a lot of these, the comic book guys and the movie guys and everything like that. Now's the time to start paying the writers to start putting a bunch of stuff in advance. But as far as the stuff to read right now, yeah, those titles that I mentioned, or just go to like, Marvel .com, go to actually DC.com doesn't have anything up because I don't know what the hell they're doing. Dynamite, Boom Studios, Valiant Comic Books, who I actually work with. These guys are actually putting up a whole bunch of their oldies but goodies for free. In fact, Valiant's putting up a bunch of their latest stuff for free. So there's the best way to find everything that you're looking for.
I mean, that's a good idea. Kind of prime the audiences for when they come back. Maybe pick up some new audiences. People are locked in with nothing better to do. Maybe they'll read some comics.
Exactly. Or go and look at a couple of videos, like, I don't know. There's a guy out there called Professor Bill who does these spotlights on stories where I talk about my favorite comic books. And I'm just
Yes.
like, hey, check this out. Here's this one comic book that I did, or check it out. Here's this one arc, or here's this one run from back in the 80s or something like that, in the Jim Shooter days. And yeah.
We were talking about that before we started, and my favorites are your explained in a minute, and you get a bunch of them. But but you could probably go through all of them in a couple hours because it's only a minute.
Yeah, it takes a lot more than a couple hours to make those, by the way. Those are the only ones that I really heavily edit, and record my voice really carefully, although it doesn't show for some of the older ones. But yeah, I'm going to start making a lot more I'm going to do less comic book reviews and do a lot more explained in a minutes. That's the theme, because nowadays they're like 2.5 minute longs. But yeah, I just call them the 10 things about. Yeah, yeah. In parentheses, it says explained in a minute, so they get the gist. That's the theme. But those in the spotlights and stories, I'm going to do a lot more of those than the other stuff, just because, yeah, the comic book reviews don't continue to get the views. It's like, oh, let me check this out this week, maybe this month, and nobody really goes back to them that much.
Yeah, I had shared on my timeline on Facebook the other day, which it got way more flack than I thought it was going to. That I guess there's a comic book company that's going to be getting racks in Walmart. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, you know what? That's kind of cool. Like, people will see it that aren't normally looking at comic books, maybe. And it made me think about, like, when I was a kid and I would go to, like, 7-Eleven. Like, that was my first exposure to comic books, was the spinner rack.
Mm. Well, these aren't going to be spinner racks. And I actually talked about this on my podcast. I should have mentioned I've got a podcast. Episode 14 just went up on Sunday. And then you can watch the video format. I usually put them up Tuesday mornings, but I put it up a day early because I didn't want it to conflict with this.
Mm.
What do you call it? But yeah, I talked a lot about that. The Allegiance comics. These guys are actually comic skaters. Are you familiar with the comic skaters?
No.
These are guys who came from the Gamergate community, and they're basically people who don't like women. They don't like whatever. And there's people who are going to, say, no, that's not what it's about. But you go to any of their live streams, and that's 100% what it's about.
Yeah, see, I didn't know any of the backstory or any of that. I was just like, oh, cool, comic books where kids will see them and
But then,
maybe pick them up for the first time.
Yeah, agreed. But they're not, familiar heroes. Anyway, the idea with that is it's actually really bad for the community. And these are some of the people this is Mitch and Elizabeth Brightwhite.
Mm.
And they're genuinely terrible human beings. They've got 4 comics that are going to go out on that. What do they call them? The sidekicks, they're calling them.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're going to go to Walmart. You're going to be they're going to 70% of the Walmarts in the United States. So you're going to be able to go, and it's going to be on the checkout line. So these are going to be impulse items. So when you go there and you see, hey, here's lighters in case you forgot to get a lighter, or candy because your kids are like, mommy, daddy, or here's the Globe or the National Enquirer or any of those. Hey, there's also going to be comic books there on the little sidekick thing. They're going to be comic books that you're not familiar with. They're going to be done on 70 weight cardboard stock. So they're going to be thick. They're not going to feel like real comic books. It's actually the stock that Image Comics uses anyways, but whatever. And for the most part, it's going to be stuff that is going to bypass the comic book stores. So mind you, we're hurting local comic book shops, which is something that in the comic book community, you don't mess with. You go to the comic book stores at the same time, at the very least, if not first. DC got into a lot of heat because they're doing exclusive comic books for Walmarts right now, in the States at least. Up here in Canada, they're going through the local comic book stores instead. But Yeah, DC has a lot of heat on them. 50% of the comic book companies are just like, we don't want to deal with DC anymore for the most part. You know what I'm saying? They're infuriated at DC Comics. Yeah, the Superman guys, the Batman guys, the Wonder Woman guys. People are mad at DC Comics because of that one decision.
So
Um,
I don't know, because so I look at it. I just kind of look at it this way: like, you start off, at 7-Eleven, then you go to the comic book store once you become a comic book fan, right? But before
this is
that,
the idea. That's
because
the idea.
because
Go on.
because I don't think the problem with, like, you could go, well, now we have like these TV shows and these movies, but the problem with that is the same thing with YouTube, Twitch, websites. People don't cross platforms, right?
Correct.
So it's the same thing with media too. Like, if you have a favorite media, you're still not that likely to go, oh, well, I watched this superhero movie. Let me see what comic books are about. You actually have to be introduced to comic books. And the problem with the comic book store is you're not likely to just have kids wander in there randomly. Especially young kids. And that's why I think, like, the impulse items is a good idea. Maybe this company isn't great. I don't know anything about them.
Mm,
And maybe there's a better way of doing it. But again,
yeah.
it's also, you generally have a really limited selection anyway, right? So it's not like you get the whole selection of comic book. Hopefully, like this, like, what's someone's appetite, and maybe they go in there, and then they want to find more, so they find a comic book store. I mean, that's my thought anyway.
Exactly. That is the way that you should do it. Doing exclusives at Walmart, though, not the way to do it. Not for any small business. Any small business would be infuriated at that. You know what I'm saying? If Craftsman Tools was only sold at Walmart or something like that. One of the ways that I think, first off, to finish off on Alliance, they also had a Kickstarter for this one comic they have called Red Rooster. And you know about Kickstarters. I mean, you had a fairly successful one that like blew records out of the water. But I mean, they had a Kickstarter that they used all of that money and they haven't fulfilled their Kickstarter yet. They haven't fulfilled all their orders yet. None of them. And they instead took that money and they this is what they did with it. They decided to take that money and start putting the stuff up in Walmart instead. And their backers are just like, hey, so you're telling me that I can go to Walmart and get the thing that I paid for before you're actually going to send me what I ordered? And
Yeah, and
that's
that's a
just
bad
raunchy.
move. And you know what?
Yeah,
They're gonna pay. They'll suffer for that if that's what they did on Kickstarter, because
hope so.
it'll probably be like their first and last Kickstarter. Because once you get a bad rap for something like that, they'll end up with people pledging to their Kickstarter just so they can comment and say bad things about them, and then withdrawing their pledges.
Oh, yeah, I think that's what's actually happened a lot on that Kickstarter because you can still go back and see that.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah,
you
as
you got to take care of the people that got you there. Like some people who backed our Kickstarter later, they're like, "Hey, why isn't my name in the book?" I'm like, "Because you didn't back during the Kickstarter. You backed afterwards, which we really appreciate, and that's awesome. But we wouldn't be able to have the book for you to pledge late to without the people that were there, when the Kickstarter was going on. So we needed to keep at least some things that were exclusive to them."
yeah,
But
you can't keep on taking off the printing press and then like put it back on just because one other guy jumped on.
yeah, so
So I
there's
get it.
definitely that going on. But I don't know. So what is the state of comic books today? Like, I know I don't read them at all, except for, like, I might grab a trade paperback now and again. That's what I
Mm.
tend to do, is grab and binge. And what I found over the years as I've done that, it's like the very last time I did it is like I was like, I have no idea what's going on with comics.
Yeah. The state of comics is such that also with the retailer thing, sending exclusives to Walmart, I think, is not the way if we're going to go Mandalorian. Saying that is not the way. What Marvel's doing, I think, is great. They're putting out 3-packs of comics that have already existed in the comic book stores, but they're slapping a new cover on there. So you could get people who've already come, to the comic book store and already bought this, and they're like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting a variant cover you know what I'm saying, for this comic book also. You know, oh, one of my favorite artists is doing a cover for this. So you know what, let me go and check it out. Or I wasn't able to get it in the comic book store, you know, before, but now I can get this and two other comic books. So that's one way to do it. Plus the idea that now it is a comic book, you know, that you know is current, and you can go to Walmart and say, oh wow, hey, look at this, and you get three. You know, you get a nice little 3-pack. And as long as they're smart enough to also put inside of that comic book, hey, if you really like this, consider going to, you know, finding your local comic book store. Check out 1-800 comic books, I think it is. And that, you know, or the website where it'll actually tell you where the nearest comic book store to you is. You know, something like that, I think, is the best idea. They do have to advertise more. They do have to cross-platform. You're right. The spinner racks is the way that people our age, you know, people in our 40s, did come back and get these comic books. So, I mean, they have to be smart enough to do that. As far as the state of comic books today, they're not doing as well, and they're more about getting famous names to come together and do a comic book, which isn't working out as well as they'd hoped. So it's not necessarily comic book fans who are doing these, or people who are like, oh yeah, I've read some comic books before, but they're famous, you know, or at least fairly famous writers for novels and things like that. And unfortunately, the someone who writes novels may have a great fantastical mind for a comic book, but they don't have their comic book voice yet. So you'll read these and they're reading like a novel, but with pictures, and it doesn't feel right.
That does sound a little tough crossing over disciplines. It's, you know, it's a skill, right? Each one is its own skill and they're different. You know,
Yeah.
just because you're it's sometimes it's harder to do something in a short form than it is a long form, because like if you're writing a novel, you've got a whole book, you have hundreds and hundreds of pages to get your point across. Where someone who has to do it in these really condensed methods of telling a story is going to be a completely different.
Yeah. And it takes a while to get your comic book voice. I know that the Critical Role, that when they first started putting out their comics, I didn't know hardly anything. I think I've watched 3 episodes and not even all the way through of the Critical Role, and it just wasn't for me. You know, it is what it is. Um, but then I decided when they put out a comic book, I was like, oh, I need to check this out. So I'm like the only guy at the time. I was the only guy who was reviewing it. I'm like, hey, they're going to cross over the comic book genre. Now this is my genre. So I started looking at it, and I'm like, okay, this isn't good. I can see where the story is pretty fun, but they're not writing it like a comic book.
Mm.
But they did, however, get Jody Houser to start writing those comic books, and she's a huge fan of the Critical Role. She's an amazing comic book writer, and all of a sudden the comic books are fantastic now for Critical Role. It's like that's what you needed to do. So boom, somebody who's a fan of both and who does, you know, actually, you know, a fan of both platforms and can put them together.
So yeah, I think originally Matt Colville was doing some of the writing,
Yeah, no
and
disrespect to Colville. The
he's a
guy's amazing at what
novelist.
he does.
He's
Yeah,
a
yeah. So
novelist, game designer.
backs up what I said, right?
Yeah, they're different disciplines, and just because you're really great at one thing doesn't mean it's gonna cross over. Like
Yeah.
so, Chad Rowe Tattoos did our tattoos, and he's got this thing where he lets people tattoo him back, especially like celebrities and stuff. And like I didn't know this until like I saw that he did a tattoo for Satine Phoenix, and then she tattooed him, and I was like, wow, that's crazy that he's just letting people. Now she's an artist, but like you're still like flesh and other mediums are just completely different. So I
Yeah,
was
is
like,
she a excuse me, a tattoo artist?
no, that's my point.
Yo.
But
I look
no, oddly enough, though, it actually came out really good, and I think she did an ampersand, the D&D ampersand on him, and it came out good.
mm,
But he, you know, he's got this like go-to mark that he has people generally do on him that's like real simple. But I was like, yeah, that's weird. But it's the whole cross discipline thing doesn't always translate, and it's not really like in a professional medium. I don't think that's really a great place to like experiment all the time as well. So yeah, that idea of getting these superstar writers in there to write something in a format maybe they haven't really explored sounds like a terrible idea.
yeah. I'm looking at some of the things in the chat. The wait a second. Do you do the whole "Where are you from?" the shout out where you're from anymore?
We have not done that in a long time. No.
Come on, Dave, kick it off.
You wouldn't. All right, because you've requested. Professor Bill wants to know where everyone is listening from in the world. So if you drop your state or country in the chat, that would be awesome.
Mine first.
You gonna do yours first?
I did mine first, and you know how I do it.
Yeah. Which Earth is that?
Oh, that's the regular Marvel universe.
Okay, that's the regular one.
Yeah. Unleaded, yes,
Yeah.
yes, without all the bells and whistles, just the regular one you're going to read in the comic books. But
And also,
okay. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if people have questions as well, feel free to ask them. Just put question in front so we can pick them out easily.
Yeah. So here, I'm trying to look in the chat right now. Is there a digital subscription for comics anywhere that's uh Alslinet? Sorry for butchering your names. Hey, if you guys ever do, check out my comic book. Hey, Jersey in the
I
house.
did see the jersey.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. But what do you call it? Oh wow, Poison. I remember Poison. What's
Yeah.
up, Kuwait? كيف حالك يا أخي? But what do you call it? Anyway, so yes, there are digital subscriptions. If you go to DC, let's see, DC Comics, they have their DC streaming service where you can watch Swamp Thing and Titans and stuff like that. You can watch Titans on Netflix. Uh, you can go to DVD and watch Doom Patrol. You can go to some place and watch whatever. Anyway, they've got a whole bunch of different ones. But if you do the DC streaming service, you also get a subscription to their comic books. So they post date it 6 months, and then you get to read all their comic books from there. With Marvel, there's only a subscription service. It's not the same as the DC streaming service, but you can go to Marvel. I know what it is, and I've got a link to it on my Twitter. So if you want to go and find comic book uni on my Twitter, it's not comic book unique, it's comic book university. I just can't fit the whole thing. You can actually see a link there to the Marvel subscription, and it's only like $9, $10 a month, and you get all of their comics also post dated 6 months. Valiant Comic Books, who I'm actually partnered with, they're actually putting out a whole bunch of free stuff for everybody to read. Dynamite Comics, Boom Studios, all these guys are putting out a bunch of free stuff also. In fact, Dynamite Comics is really good. Every single one of their issue number ones are free. And then if you want to buy their next stuff, by all means, jump in. So there's a bunch of ways to get digital comic books right now. And that is definitely seems the way of the future.
What is the New Jersey comic book company?
New Jersey comic book. There is one in New Jersey.
It's in South Jersey too. It's local to us.
I know what it is, and I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is either.
It's actually in not more. Is it in Morriston? It's close to Cherry Hill.
Yeah, it's right here local to us. And I forget the name of the company. I'm gonna Google it. I have the power to figure this out.
I was just talking about it on my podcast a couple days, which you guys can find Comic Book University podcast wherever you guys get podcasts. But what do you call it? Yeah, and I was just talking about it, and I was literally just saying, you know what? This is actually right over here, next to Nerdarchy. You know, the Nerdarchy guys, Nerdarchy headquarters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget which one it is, but anyway.
It's actually a lot harder to Google than I thought it was going to be because all the comic book stores come up.
Do I have an opinion on? Here's a question from Chance's D&D Spellbook. Might be a little touchy. Do you have any opinions on what's happening with the new Warriors? Okay, so here's one of the things that we were just talking about. The latest thing, New Warriors. Okay, this is a direct answer to what do you call it? The Comicsgate community. All right, when you start answering people who are against you and making it into art, it usually doesn't work out for you. You know what I'm saying? Usually just ignore those kinds of people. But they basically took there's these two I think they're twins, whatever they are, called Safe Space and Snowflake and Safe Space. These two characters. They're not out yet. And you remember the New Warriors, right?
Yeah, that was one of the comics that I actually read. I read everything but like the Avengers and Fantastic Four.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you used to read a lot of the stuff that wasn't the biggest, stuff out there. I remember you liked, like you'd probably read Great Lakes Avengers before you'd read
I
freaking
would.
Fantastic Four, right?
I
See?
would.
Um, Alpha Flight. We're both Alpha Flight brothers, you know what I'm saying? But this is one of those controversies that actually wound up making the Comicsgate community and the non-Comicsgate community come together for the first time and say this is really stupid. The guy that I actually do my podcast with, Chillmonger, he also has a YouTube site. Check him out. He'd suggested, I really hope that this is just a joke. That we're going to buy this comic book. It's been delayed because the situation right now. It's been delayed, but when it does come out, New Warriors issue number 1. Hey man, check it out. There's going to be these characters in here called Snowflake and Safe Space, and they're going to be what are they? Non-binary. One of the characters is going to be non-binary. And for me, it's like the main character, Snowflake, it's more about the identity of the character, non-binary, doesn't want to be associated with this, that, whatever. And it's like, okay, what's the character's origin? Well, it's not really clear yet. Okay, what's the character's power? They can make little snowflakes out of ice. So you literally made a character and wanted to call it Snowflake before you even thought up the powers or what it can do or anything like that. Like, this is just ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing imaginable. So yeah. And when they do the safe space, although it's a dumb name for me, in my opinion, I think it's actually a cool power. Check this out. They have the power to make force fields, but only for other people. You can't put the force field around yourself. You can't even stand behind the force field. It has to be a selfless act, which, wow, okay, that sounds interesting. But like the safe space thing, they got the one character that was experimental internet gas, makes them, able to see the internet without actually being on the internet. They connect. I think that's called the Ethernet. I think that's called wireless internet. Saying, but whatever. Like there's some really weird powers, but it's basically just an answer to freaking whatever is out there, and like the haters on the local comic book community. I think it's just a horrible move. And here and to relate this back to what I was talking about before, hiring celebrities to make comic books as opposed to people who are actually good at comic books. This is done by Daniel Kibblesmith. Kibblesmith is the guy who writes a bunch of screenplays for TV shows and whatnot, and I think movies. And he's most famous, I believe, for being the guy who writes some of the jokes for Colbert, Stephen Colbert. So, hey, really good. This guy's a millionaire. This guy's legitimately a millionaire. And now he decides, I want to write comic books also. A straight white guy who wants to write about non-binary people. And it's just like, why? Why do we need your voice? Why do we need you telling us these things? And this is the guy who's done all sorts of goofy stuff before, like he writes a Deadpool comic book where Deadpool gets his right arm ripped off and he decapitates a zebra and puts the zebra's head and neck on his shoulder, and now he has a resurrected zebra head, and that's how he's going. And it's like, what sort of absolutely moronic things are you doing in the comic books right now? All of his stuff gets canceled. All of his stuff is like,
It
why?
sounds terrible.
Yeah, why is this guy still writing stuff?
Well, you know
Why
what? When back in the day, Alpha Flight did diversification very well, and it was very subtle, and it was worked into the story throughout the whole thing, and like it was like a part of the character that really wasn't touched on for until later, but it was like it would just slowly kind of build, and with North Star Gene Paul,
Yeah.
which was done really well.
It was done exceptionally well for two reasons. One, Jim Byrne, who was doing the work, John Byrne. I always that's one of those names I always mess up. Amazing artist, damn good writer, but he's also a little bit of a pervert. Let's just call it like it is. The guy's a little bit of a pervert. How many times have you seen North Star's sister half naked or completely naked, and you're just like, oh hey, how you doing? Right? You and I were like 13 years old, 15, 16
Yeah,
years old when
definitely
those comic
teens.
books came
Yeah.
out. that definitely advanced our sexual curiosity, at that particular moment, right? A lot of he's done this one thing where this is gonna tick off Doug, Nerdator Doug. He did this one thing where Big Barda wound up doing porn and slept with other people, like Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, right? He did this thing. He did the one comic book, I think it was Marvel graphic novel number 18, where the She-Hulk twice in the same comic book at gunpoint had to take off her clothes, strip completely naked in front of people, and you got to see like the shoulder, and you actually got to see her butt in on a screen in the comic. And it's like, dude, what are you doing to comic books right now? The guy's a little
Why?
bit perverted, all right?
Why?
Amazing, right? Amazing artist, pretty good stories, but he's a little bit perverted, all right? It is what it is. And he was the one who was writing Alpha Flight at the time. But the editor in chief at the time was Jim Shooter, who was like, listen, you can put in these different things, but I don't need you coming out and saying North Star is gay. Hey, look, everybody, North Star's gay. Instead, we'd see him swimming, in a Speedo with, the guy who would eventually become his husband and stuff like that. And it would just be a casual thing. It's like, make it casual, make it normal. And this was in the 80s, mind you,
Yeah.
right? Where you could say anything about gay people. It would be horrible, and just bang. Jim Shooter was amazing. And Shooter is a guy who I actually have email conversations with, a couple of times a month. You know what I'm saying? And he talks about how like he's not a fan of like, a Comicsgate movement, but he did keep the idea of keep it simple, make it normal in the comic books, as opposed to trying to push for something. Don't try and teach people things. Politics have existed in comic books since the creation of comic books. You know this, but they didn't try and push it hard, like, hey, check this out. But it always existed. For crying out loud, X-Men, right?
That was the whole premise.
Yeah.
Essentially, that was Stanley's answer to the civil rights movement. Yeah, I mean, in Alpha Flight, they addressed mental health, sexuality, the AIDS epidemic. All of that
Yeah.
stuff kind of came up, and they were also good at introducing like really cool villains, but then they always murdered them, so they never lasted very long.
That was somebody just mentioned Silver Age. Elfbait mentions that. What's up, Elfbait?
Yeah.
That's actually some Silver Age stuff where it's like, here's this new villain, and now he's dead.
And
It's like, dude,
yeah,
what, are you kidding me right now?
yeah,
Yeah, then the Bronze Age, and that was really Jim Shooter's time. In the Bronze Age, it was just like, listen, let's keep some of these, let's just use some of the same characters. You want to introduce something new, cool. And they did, excuse me, a lot of things that the Gators complain about is stuff that actually happened under Jim Shooter, which is like, in my opinion, most of our opinions, the best time for comics. That was not too long afterwards, the Thing was turned into a pineapple. You remember the spiky thing,
yeah.
right? The Hulk was turned gray and made extremely weak, but he became a mafia
Joe Fixit.
enforcer. Yeah, Joe Fixit for in Las Vegas. Don't just say Vegas,
Yeah.
right? Spider-Man got the black outfit. Like the classic Steve Ditko, red and blue with the webs. That's disappeared. Now it's all a black thing. Like what? What do you call it? Everybody got a costume change, right? Or more than a costume change, like an actual character design change. Iron Man wound up becoming Jim Rhodes wound up becoming Iron Man, Rhodey. And the Silver Centurion armor came out. That was through Bob Layton. Like a lot of comic books were, the characters were changed drastically, but it was done in a way that it was really cool. It was done in a way where it's like, whoa, I'm really interested in seeing this right now.
I did actually recently catch your recap on the Hulk versus Thing.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's my favorite battle that they ever did because it was just so different. Yeah, spotlight on story for what did I call that one? Whatever, it's one of the most recent ones I did.
I,
I'm rereading all my Iron Man comic books right now, so I'm trying to take each armor that he wore, like the Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 and so on, and I'm going to do like the best story that, happened while he was wearing that armor and so on and so forth.
yeah, you know what? That one really spoke to me because I remember reading those comics, and I was like, oh, let's see what Bill has to say about this fight. That fight annoyed me because I was like, oh, finally Thing can finally win. But
Yeah, but look at what they did with the Hulk. He
Yeah.
became sneaky. Hey, in the
Yeah.
Fantastic Four comic book, he won. The Thing won.
Yeah.
But then the Hulk comic book, he's like, I need to be smarter than this. So it was great. I actually used that in a real fight that I did one time. I used the Heimlich maneuver on somebody. They're like, don't use your martial arts. I was like, okay, fine. So we just wrestled, and I was a lot taller than this guy, and he was, he had a better um,
Center of gravity.
um, yeah, center of gravity. Thank you. So like his shoulders were like, just a little bit above my waist. So I'm like, what am I going to do? And he kept on flipping me. I'm like, I can't take much more of this. He's stealing my air. I was like, ooh. And suddenly I remembered that comic book. I'm like, so I grappled and got behind him, and I just started like a snake, just like, Heimlich maneuver on him. And he's like, okay. I'm like, yes, comic books won the
The Hulk for the win.
day. Yeah.
That's funny. So, how you said you have a bunch of Marvel stuff, the RPG kind of in the bank. Actually, you know what? For people that haven't played the Marvel FASERIP system, you want to give them a quick, what's it about?
Sure. I've got like 50 videos of,
Yeah.
teaching them what it's all about. But basically,
Elevator pitch. Elevator pitch.
elevator pitch, it's the easiest system in the world. For an 80s game, there's like one chart. You know what I'm saying? There's a couple charts for character creation. After that, there's only one chart that you use. Actually, I keep all of my books here because I actually still play the games. Like there's this periodic table chart, that's actually supposed to be colored. I printed, and you're allowed to do this. Just go and print all the books, go to Classic Marvel Forever, and you can actually take all of these amazing characters that, we've grown to love, and you can actually play these characters. When you get a little bit better with the system, you can make all of the DC characters. Heck, you don't even have to do that. Go to like Classic Marvel Forever or to Ben Riley's site, which is a good play on the best of the Spider-Man clones, and you can actually find all of these guys, and boom, say you could actually start playing these guys or make your own characters, which is my favorite thing to do. But yeah, season 1 and 2 is on the Nerdarchy website, or excuse me, the Nerdarchy YouTube channel. I did a whole bunch of articles for the FASERIP game also. That Nerdaturd Doug actually did a freaking fantastic job of editing and putting up. Actually, this was back in the day of Ty also. He wasn't Nerdaturd, but he was the original editor, and he actually did a whole bunch of these also. And then season 3 is on my channel, and today I'm going to start putting up week by week season 4. So yeah, and that's a big one. Like, I'm not clowning around with season 4. I've got something happening street level. That's the first one I'm putting up. I've also got something going on in Atlantis, and that's actually an all-female campaign. I'm kind of biting off of your Scarlet Sisterhood. Megan is actually playing in that one. Megan Miller.
Cool.
She's actually playing in that one. I'm going to have an all magical system. Might be finding out some stuff that happened in the Dark Force dimension. That's right. We're resolving some of the things that happened in season 2. So, and a couple of guests appear once in a while. One of these days, I'm going to tap you to be a guest also, and you have to say yes.
I'm sure that won't be too hard. Is Megan
Marley O'Malley?
Yeah, is Megan? Are they playing revising their character?
Megan, no, not. Megan's just she's actually making a different character. But I've got some other women joining it. Actually, some of her friends too, because that was a really hard one to coordinate. But yeah.
Yeah. I guess, and also you're going with something that's a little bit more obscure as well. So I'm sure that makes it a little more difficult finding a player pool.
Yeah, big time. Big time. Like, not too many people want to play an Atlantis.
You just rambled
campaign.
off a bunch of games. Like, is that 4?
That's all for season 4. So I've got a group of players playing this campaign. Actually, the campaign that I'm releasing today has a couple of people who are in the chat today. What's up, everybody? A bunch of Comic Book University alumni. But also, it's got a DC Comics artist, Paul Fry. He's actually playing the game also. And he's just like, dude, if you're ever going to do those Marvel games again, I would love to be in one. It's like, okay. And now I've got a bunch of other, artists, mostly artists, who want to jump in. Also, I'm like, sure, I'd be happy to.
Now you can do your own celebrity game.
Essentially, yes.
But if you do that, you absolutely got to at least do an overlay.
Oh, geez, making fun of me about the overlay again. Yeah,
Listen,
yeah,
I
yeah.
got a
We'll see
guy.
what
I
we
got
do.
a guy that can do them for you.
Yeah.
Does a
Okay.
really good
Maybe
does really good work, and it's fairly inexpensive.
shoot him my way. I'll say yes.
I mean, that's what I mean. So we're now using overlays, but it's not because we're doing them. We found someone who's like, hey, but I don't know. It just makes it pop a little bit more. Are you guys using Zoom?
No, I'm using StreamYard.
StreamYard. Okay, yeah, that's the other one. We just started using that one recently with another game that we're playing.
Nice.
So that's 4 campaigns for season 4.
Uh, at least 4, possibly 5, because I've got an overarching story that I want to tell that's going to
Yeah,
lead into season 6 or season 5, and that's the one that's going to lead up into something insane. And then when season 6 comes up, that's going to be like all bets are off at this point. So yeah, I've like me, dude. I don't think of just what's the next game I'm gonna play. Dude, no, I'm like, dude, I'm thinking several campaigns in the future, how all of this is gonna be. So yeah.
that's a lot. It's a lot of characters. Do you have any standouts? Like not so much better, but like someone that just came up with a concept. They're like, it's like, wow, I never thought about that, or that's super interesting.
Yeah, Clark, who I think is in the chat right now. Uh, his name is Clark. He's from Kansas. Go figure. But no, and that's just his real life identity.
Yeah.
But in the campaign, he
Now,
came up with this
now that
very
Professor
interesting.
Bill has just doxed you.
No, we talk about it in the game also. I didn't give him his address, jeez. But no, he came up with a really fantastic character idea because he watched some of the things where I say I'm just like, hey, I nobody ever does this and nobody ever does that, and nobody ever does that. So he took those 3 things. He's like, I'm gonna put them all into one character, and he did it amazingly. I'm like, oh my god, wow. Bricks and Stone, they're both in the chat right now, and Derek Pierce is like, what about Bricks and Stone? Which is actually Xavier, who was Mystery Mutt in season 2.
Okay.
And then Derek, who's cool, and he's actually running an offline campaign that I actually get to be a player in. Last time I was in a player was in this open source game that I was run by you. You remember that?
Oh yeah, Open Legend. Yep.
But Open Legend, there we go. But anyway, yeah. Oh yeah, Ted was in that game also, Jordan. But yeah, anyway, yeah, there's a bunch. And Ty had a really cool character who he called the Millennial, and what he thinks a millennial is, which is not anything like what a millennial is, but it's a really fun, it's a really fun story. So
Uh,
yeah,
I'm
there's
just envisioning the OK Boomers flying left and right.
right, right, and he's only Gen X,
That's funny.
but yeah, no, all of it is just freaking like there's so many guys. Like I could literally name every single one of these characters. You know what I'm saying?
The
Uh,
millennial needs OK Boomer as his nemesis.
I was thinking about that. There might even be a return of the hurdy-gurdy man at some point. I'm just saying.
Could
Just saying.
happen.
That's an original character
So
that
what are
I
those three
previously
powers? What are those
tweeted up
three
there.
powers that were combined?
Oh well, I no, it wasn't about powers being combined. It's origins and things like that. I
Okay.
don't want to spoil it. Plus,
Yeah.
Clark is actually freaking amazing. He decided to do a cosplay
Uh-huh.
for every single one of the campaigns that we did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we start off and he's just like, hey, and it's like, oh, we got to guess like what he is, and yeah, it's good.
Oh my god. I hope the costumes are really cheesy. Like
No, they're actually really good.
that depresses me a little bit. It would be great if everyone showed up with like greatest American hero style costumes.
Yes. We got to play that. We all got to sing the theme song.
Yeah, yeah. I've always wanted to do like a tick style game.
Oh, okay. Play by text. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
No, 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 no. The hero tick, the tick.
Oh, a tick character.
Yeah,
Yeah, spoon.
yeah. Not in the face. It's classic. Um, the so the Marvel FASERIP system for anybody that's interested. First of all, go to Professor Bill's channel and check it out. And one of the cool things is that you can basically download everything for free.
Yes.
One of the perks of it being a dead system.
Yeah.
um, is
And it's
one.
so easy to play.
It's so simplistic for an '80s game. Like in the '80s, like the hallmark of a good game was like how many charts and tables can you cram into it, and this just totally lacked that. And it was like one of the first systems where you had spendable XP. Like
Yes.
your XP one, you start off with XP,
Mm,
essentially, and then you need that XP in order to level up your character, your abilities, get new abilities. But at the same
yes.
time, while you're playing the game, you can spend that XP in order to increase your chances of success. And oddly enough, like some of the things you did to like increase your abilities required you to have successes, and they were very hard to do. So you had to spend it anyway. So that part of it was really cool. And also, like if you behaved badly in the game, you would lose XP.
Yes.
There was, unless you were a villain, there was a downside to it. Like if you killed someone and you were supposed to be a hero, you lose all your XP and you have to start over again.
And your team XP also. So your team members would actually be mad at you for killing somebody. So it really, lent credence to
Yeah.
Cyclops always yelling at Wolverine, "Don't kill!"
Yeah, because like you said, the team XP, right? So basically, you had a stat called Karma, and that just it's your XP for simplicity's sake. But then you could have a group Karma pool where everyone puts into it, and you share it. So if one of the characters needed to do something and they were running short, they could take from there and borrow from there and use that.
Hmm.
So it's definitely like one of the cool things. And I don't know that it is the first game to do it, but I kind of feel like it is.
I think it is, and it's definitely the best one. There's absolutely no doubt it's the best system that does that. And one of my favorite things about the system too is it keeps in tune with the comic books. You don't usually wind up seeing people with brand new powers showing up, right? Like the idea of Cyclops, like shooting his, eye beams, his optic beams all the time, and then all of a sudden he grows wings and flies. Like, wait, what? Like that never happens in the comic books, right? Instead, he finds new ways to use his optic blasts. You know what I'm saying? And that leads to the power stunt
Yeah.
ability. So you're basically taking the power that you have, but using it in ways that normally you wouldn't do it. And this is one of the best ways to do it. Like if you've got, let's say, and this actually happens in part 3 of season 4. You actually have two Dark Force users who use their powers very differently, radically different from each other. So and with the karma system, you're 100% in charge of your own character progression. So look, all the love in the world to D&D and pretty much every other system out there, but you always know, oh, I'm level 1 right now. I can't wait, when I get to level 2, I'm going to have this and this and this. I can't wait to get to level 6 because that's when all of a sudden I get this, and that's when I get to make a little bit of a choice going this way or this way or this way with my rogue character, for instance. I always love playing the rogues.
Hmm.
But with Marvel, it's literally the possibilities are endless. There are people who actually almost freeze up because they're like, there's literally an infinite number of choices. It's all about my imagination. What do I want to do with all of this karma that I have? Do I want a new power? Do I want to make some new power stunts? Do I want to raise my strength attribute to be able to hit harder? Something like, what do I want to do with the power? It's completely in your hands.
Well, if you want a new power, all you can do really is stare at your karma pool sadly for a long, long time.
3,000 karma points are good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 3,000 points, and then you have to actually buy the rank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which also, your mastery of the system was quite impressive because it's going back a long way. But that was one of the systems where I just loved making characters and
Yeah.
randomly rolling, especially when the Advanced Powers book came out, and you could do all kinds of crazy things there.
The advanced book, the blue book, that's the system that I use. And yeah, when I was 12, I don't know, when I was 14, especially, I moved around so many times from state to state to state. We wound up being in a situation where we were moving around a lot, and I couldn't make friends fast enough, especially not friends. Back in the 80s, we couldn't wear a superhero t-shirt. You know what I'm saying? We couldn't wear a Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt if they even made them.
And
You know what I'm saying?
forget
We could,
about wearing a cape. You definitely got weird looks.
okay, you definitely get in trouble there. Unless you're Bob Kane, then you can get away with it. But I mean, like, I was a pretty popular guy in school. I was
Yeah.
in, all the sports and everything like that. And even then, I didn't dare risk my social status by walking in with a Captain America t-shirt. You couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? So you definitely couldn't let anybody know that you played, role-playing games back in the 80s. God forbid. You know what I'm saying? So instead, we made we had like the secret societies where we would do these things. But I never even got the chance to make those kinds of friends when I was moving around all that time for like 2 years straight. So I would just take the Marvel FASERIP game and I would just make characters forever, characters that I never ever got the chance to play. And but it did give me a good understanding, and I have a pretty good memory, so that helps also to let me remember all of these rules and think of all these different ways that we could fudge on the system, because it makes it really, the system itself is so loose, and it's one of the first systems that tells you the rules aren't there to obey. The rules are there as a general guideline. You do what you need to do for your game. Don't be beholden to the rules necessarily. Nate used to always say that.
I remember when we were kids and we used to play. I don't think we actually ever played any adventures. We would just make characters to have them fight in the wrestling federation, whatever it was for Marvel. I don't remember. I'm sure you know.
Uh,
Because in the Marvel universe they have the superhero wrestling league.
Oh, you're talking about the unlimited weight class wrestling. Unlimited class, yeah, UCW, whatever, yeah, that
So,
one. In the thing issue number 1, I think introduced that.
yeah, and
Maybe
D
issue 4.
Man. I think of when he's from there, right?
D-Man, Demolition Man, yes,
Yeah. So we
yeah,
ended up
a lot
doing
of
more of
characters.
that than anything.
Yeah, they got their powers through Power Broker Incorporated.
Oh yes, of course. So instead of playing it wasn't until years later that we'd actually end up actually playing adventures,
Yeah.
in there. I think now I've clocked more time playing with you than we ever did. That was like a period of time for gaming where we would like just play a new game every week, and that
Mm.
so which meant you played like a session or maybe you made characters, and that was it.
There were
Uh,
so many games out.
yeah, so like with like our friend groups, there was like four of us that would play and one person that would rum, and they're like, I got a new game, and
Yeah.
yeah, he was an older kid, which always had like side jobs, so he always had discretionary income.
I'm still actually not actively, but kind of actively making my own system. It's just the idea of, how do I do this where it's very different from everybody else? There are people who make a system just for the sake of making a system. They don't even have a niche for it.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of I kind of hate that, and also like when someone's like, well, I'll ask them about a specific mechanic. I'm like, well, why'd you do that? And they're like, oh, because I thought it would be different. I'm like, ugh, that's terrible. Like,
well,
like the the best things come from trying to solve problems, and this being an actual solution to a problem, not because you want it to be different.
yeah.
So that's the tough thing, and that's why like when people are like, "Are you guys ever going to make a system?" I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot of really good ones.
There are a lot of really good ones. Joe Seiler, I think that's how you pronounce. I'm famous for butchering names, so sorry in advance. Says, so would a D&D comic go over well?
They've had
Check out
many.
Jim Zub. Check out Jim Zub. I'm sorry, this guy's always, this is actually the guy I told you to interview, and he just, I guess, never made the time for you.
You know what? He did email me, and we did talk a little bit, but it just
I know
never.
that, yeah.
Yeah, but nothing did exactly come of it. But
He is actually a
happens.
college professor
Yeah,
teaching graphic arts over here at Seneca College because he's up here in Toronto.
yeah.
He every time I meet him, he always makes time for me. I can talk to him, whatever. But as far as actually getting interview time, he still hasn't been able to give me interview time. The guy is always busy. He works for Marvel. He works for IDW. He does his own creator-owned stuff. The guy is always doing something. Um, and he's actually the guy who's in charge with IDW, has the license to do the Dungeons and Dragons comic books, and he does most of them. He actually did a crossover, Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons. Like, the guy's insane with the things that he does. But if you want to see a good Dungeons and Dragons comic book, consider going and checking those out. But even then, Marvel and DC, I think, also has done a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons comic books back in the day.
There was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There was a
Yep.
Dragonlance for
Yep.
sure. Um, yeah,
They
I
had
know there's
Forgotten
been quite a
Realms
few.
also.
Yeah, and then there's probably just a ton of comic books that aren't D&D comic books, but they are definitely inspired by D&D, like Rat Queens
Rat Queens is amazing. I did a
is one.
spotlight and story for that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you could definitely find plenty of them out there.
Yeah. Yes, Joe, but 1B. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jim's up. It's actually Zim Zabinski. I forget what it is, the Polish name, but he just goes by Jim Zub. Totally awesome guy. Yeah, we don't talk anymore that much, but we're still friends on Facebook and stuff. You know how it works on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also too, people that are busy, it's just hard. You
Yeah.
know, just looking to see if there's any questions. I know there's a few. Oh, past time too.
Well, I'm also looking at the time.
Yeah, yeah. So we are up on the hour. Final thoughts.
Play more FASERIP and read more comics. Support your local comic book stores.
Make FASERIP not a dead system anymore.
Play more RPGs, man. Just have fun, especially nowadays, man.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot more RPGs are definitely getting played.
Oh yeah.
So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.